Recognize that you're at the crossroads, at the pivot, where you need to make a decision to be stuck and just stay where you're at or move right on into that pivot zone so that you can find joy and live your best life. Welcome to Joy in the Pivot. Have you ever had the experience where something just happens? Just you're just minding your business, you're going on living your life, and life happens. And you just don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. It says you feel like, hey, Lord, I'm just minding my business. I'm just trying to do what you're telling me to do. I ain't bothering nobody. And life happens. Have you ever felt that way? Maybe it's something on the job. Maybe it's something with your health. Maybe it's something with your spouse or your partner or your significant other. Maybe it's something with your kids, maybe a friend, or maybe you just feel like you're just kind of what we used to say in a funk, you just don't know what's going on. Or have you ever felt that you're in a room and you're in a crowd, but all of a sudden you just feel like that group, that environment, that vibe just no longer is aligned with you. You feel like you don't belong. Have you ever felt like that? That's what I call one of those defining moments, one of those pivots. And in today's episode, I want to talk about be still and keep going. Step one in the pivot zone. As you hear me say all the time, life is a series of pivots, it's a series of experiences. And I don't know about you, but I know that I think when I was younger, I just knew it was natural that things happen, you go a different direction, you just keep pushing through. But I think as an adult, when things happen, it just even more just felt like the wind was knocked out of me, and you have to kinda stop. And if you're not careful, you can get stuck. You can get stuck replaying what happened. Uh, Satan has a way of helping us replay what happens, and it takes on a whole life of its own. And if we're really not careful, we start internalizing, and it's very easy that we take the fault for everything because really underneath it is we want to feel like we control everything and everybody. I said it, I just had to say it. Because when life feels like it's out of control, human nature is to try to regain a sense of control. So, with that in mind, it's very easy for you to begin to feel like, oh, well, it's all my fault. It's my fault. If I hadn't done this, if I hadn't done that, because you're trying to understand what just happened. How could that person have done that? How could that have just happened? How could that person be here yesterday and now they passed away and they're no longer here? What did I miss? What did I not see? What could I have prevented? Things happen with our kids. And if you're like me, you have adult children, and that's a whole nother vibe because you want to see them avoid the things that you went through. And so you want to pour everything in them and you want to say, don't do that, don't do that. You want them to move this way, don't move that way. And as you soon find out, they have to live their lives. Now, we have to set boundaries on how we play out in their story, but it is their life. And really, when we look at it, it comes back to we have to look at how we respond to things. And in these pivots that happen in life, and I know with the word pivot, often people think that it's like you're totally going a different direction. But that's not really what a pivot means. A pivot is changing your thinking, changing your approach on how you are going to move forward. And that's really one of the major takeaways in today's time together is that you have to keep going and you have to keep going, not knowing all the answers. You have to keep going, really stepping out on faith. And as I have shared with you in previous episodes, being a minister, from the outside, people would think, oh, well, she's an ordained minister. She's just got it all together and she knows all the scriptures in the Bible and she lives all the scriptures out in the Bible. As you've heard me say, no, very much human, very much human. And to be honest, I've never really wanted to be one of those people who, I'm just going to say it, I've never really wanted to be one of those people who can quote you a scripture for everything in life because to me, what's most important is I know where to find the answer. And I go to the Bible and find the answer if I don't have it, if I don't have that scripture on my mind, because I feel it's more important that we're living a life patterned after Christ. And so, circling back, is that when you hit a pivot, when you hit a snag, initially it can seem like such a negative, right? I know that when I have hit pivots in life, be it changes at the job, changes in relationships. As I said, when my parents passed away, I wondered, how do I move forward? I can remember in 2002 when my father was ill, my son was a newborn. My son was born at the first part of 2002 and my father um had recurrent cancer and was ill by the end of that year. And I remember when he passed away, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. Yes, I'm a physician, but I couldn't believe it. I did not know what to do. I was like, my dad to me was bigger than life, bigger than life. So while I knew, yes, people pass away, I when he was sick and when there was a somewhat of a role reversal when I had to become, along with my mom, his caregiver. That's a role reversal. The man who I used to go to and used to I love my dad. He taught me how to fish. He taught me how to laugh because he had a wonderful sense of humor. And he also taught me to always remember that no one is better than anybody else. And had gone to the Korean War and come back, Purple Heart. But I also learned a lot about life from him, coming from the segregated South and even dealing with his experiences throughout his life. But when he passed away, I just couldn't believe it. And I'm gonna be honest, I was angry. I was angry. I can remember when we were actually, I remember because I was working. There were a couple things I remember. When I was working, I remember seeing, I don't know, it just came to mind. I was looking at someone pumping gas, and it came to my mind going, what makes that person, I'm just being honest, why is he still here and my dad's not here? That's just what came to mind. I had, I'd experienced deaths of grandparents and aunts and but yet first parent. And then I can remember when we were in the limousine going to his funeral and saying, not even just saying, wanting to yell at the world like, how can you continue to live your lives? Don't you know my dad is no longer here? I can just remember that. And I was numb. I just was numb. And I can remember the because I was caring for him the night he passed away, and the irony because I had been up with him all night. My mom was in another room getting some rest, and my two kids, my son was, months old, and I had told my dad, he was in his room. And I said, "You know what? I'm dad." And he was going through his transition. And I said, "I'll be back. I just got to lay down for a little bit." So I went to lay down and then I heard my son cry. So I got up to see about him. And I decided to peek in on my dad and he had passed. So once all of that went through, I went into right task oriented mode, right? Making arrangements. I told the hospice agency, "I'm good. I'll do it. I'll call the mortuary. You don't have to come. I've got this," because I went into physician mode. I went into physician mode, right? Because we fall back on what we feel comfortable in when we hit these type of situations. So we went through everything, and yet I can remember after we went through the initial, within the first days, I remember crawling up in a ball. I was just in the fetal position in bed, going, "What do I do now? Dad's not here. What do I do?" And at that point, what I heard was my dad saying, and I get choked up about it, is I could just hear him say, "You got to take care of the kids. You got to take care of my grandbabies." Because he was definitely one of them grandfathers. Yeah, but he'd spoil them. And I that's what pushed me to keep going was I had to keep going because I had to take care of my kids. And going through life, running back and jumping back into work, right? More pivots over time. And it all hit me a year later. And I didn't tell you he passed away on my birthday. So we always have that in common. And I think it was, I'm not upset about it because I think it was symbolic in the fact that that was my birthday now symbolizes a big pivot. Not only the day that I came into this world after my mom had tried so many different times to have a child and had some miscarriages, and I'm here. So, going forward down the line, series of pivots. And then my mother passed away somewhat unexpectedly. She just kind of hit the wall. And, as I think a lot of older adults did in the time around the COVID pandemic, 2019, 2020, with them getting out of their routine and her health. She had been, as I tell people, she was like the star patient. And losing her in 2021 was another huge, huge pivot. Now both parents gone. And with her, she was trying to give me some little inkling signs because she kept wanting to tell me about this that needed to be done and that, and I wasn't hearing it until I realized things were going down versus getting better. And another huge pivot. Now both parents are gone, and it really is that saying, the orphaned adult, where both of your parents are gone, and now you really, I feel like you have to even more step up your game because it's like, how the kids now talk about adulting? Well, now this is really being adult. When now both the parents are gone. Major pivots. Now, with this pivot with my mom, I'm gonna tell you, I didn't really, I wasn't, it was rough. Yet now I knew I had to keep going because I have responsibilities. I had to step in and be, as I call, the junior matriarch now, right? And I share that with you that there have been multiple pivots between my dad passing in 2022 and my mom passing in 2021. I have had to make a lot of pivots. And the hugest pivot was realizing in 2019, because that's really when God began talking to me, that who I had identified myself as, this, as the position of physician, as the end game, the goal I had been aspiring, that was just a part of my journey. That was the huge pivot in my thinking. And there were some things that happened because, as you've heard me share, God had to pull the emergency cord off the treadmill. And I've talked about it in other episodes, that he had to get my attention because I was not, I wasn't taking good care of myself emotionally or physically or spiritually. I had gotten off course. I was on this treadmill. And I share that because As we talk about moving forward on faith, because when you hit a pivot, you have to move forward with faith. And when I'm talking about moving forward with faith, I'm not coming from this greater than thou. And if, your faith, if you had enough faith, you'd be okay. It's not like that. Faith is, I'm going to be honest, it's doing it scared. It's doing with it's doing and moving forward without having all the answers. That's what moving forward is. And it means to keep going. So you heard me say is to be still and keep going. That is truly step one when you hit a pivot, when you hit a crossroads where you either have to make the decision to get stuck and just stay there, or that you are going to take the step to keep going. And it's even before you have the answer or what the next step is saying, I'm not going to stay here. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm going to keep going. I have to. You have to say, I need to move forward. I have to. I have no choice. And so you will hear me say over and over, starting with the end in mind. You have to break things down in little steps. So when you hit that crossroads, when you have to make that decision, like first saying, I'm at a crossroads. First, you have to say, I'm at a crossroads. I'm at a pivot. This is different. I'm at a different place. God is calling me to do something different here. A different decision is needed. A different action is needed. Is you're going to be still and you're going to ask God, and He is going to show you, yes, that He needs you to approach this situation differently than what you have done before. It is in that stillness that He can talk to you. And being still means that you try to focus less on your thoughts and what you think about the situation and what they said and what they did and you're not enough and all of that. Be still and say, Lord, what do you need me to see here? What do you need me to do here? I acknowledge that I'm at a crossroads, I'm at a pivot. Lord, I don't have the answers. I'm looking to you for the answers. And then you get ready to move. Because if you just stop and just say, I'm at a crossroads, it is what it is, and you just go sit down and you just stop doing anything, that's when Satan gets busy. He just starts having you replay things over and over and over and over. And I need you to tell Satan, yeah, yeah. I may have said this, I may have done that. Yes, I made some mistakes in the past, but I know God loves me. And just how He's gotten me through things in the past, He will get me through this too. And I am willing to do the work that I need to do to get through this season so I can get to the other side so I can live the life that God has created for me with my name on it. So sis, I want you to get still. First recognize that whoo, life just happened. As the car sounds, put a little brake on. Realize the game has changed, the environment has changed, you have changed so that you no longer want to settle the way things have been. And then you get still and say, Lord, I know you are God, just like in Psalm 46:10. I know that you are God. And you say, I want to do life differently, better, stronger, more courageously. Because if I do that, Lord, I know it's never too late. I want to live a life of joy. I want to be everything that I can be. And you keep moving, sis. It's going to be scary. It's going to be scary. I'm telling you, it's going to be scary. And you are going to have people, as you've heard me say before, everybody can't go with you in this new season, or some of them you can't let go of. So you're going to have to kind of put some selective mute on them. Selective mute, right? Like there's selective amnesia, there's selective hearing. Well, maybe we call it selective hearing. I call it also selective mute. You have to just, sometimes you just have to keep going because you know what God is putting in you, what He's already put in you, and what He wants to put in you. Keep going. And know, really, life is not on autopilot. When you get into autopilot mode, watch out. You don't want to do that. I'm a witness. You don't want to get on that autopilot living mode. Take 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time. And don't be hard on yourself if you have to do some self talk every day or multiple times during the day. Because understand, Satan's going to want you to get detoured because he don't want you to get to the next level. And you're going to have people around you that we have to pray for them. I'm not saying they're Satan. I'm not saying it because we all can get a little bit of that negative spirit in us, that flesh in us, if we're not careful. But, that flesh is working through them to deter you. Be still and keep going. Do both. Recognize that you're at a pivot, a crossroads, which really is, it can feel like a negative, but I want you to look at it as a signpost. I want you to almost like at those train railroad crossing where the lights are flashing and they used to have the little thing that would go back and forth. And it's just a warning. God is saying something is getting ready to happen. And even in the midst of what initially feels like a very rough situation, there is joy. There is joy. There is growth. And you can do it. Recognize that you're at the crossroads, at the pivot, where you need to make a decision to be stuck and just stay where you're at, or move right on into that pivot zone so that you can find joy and live your best life. You deserve it. You created for this moment. Just like Esther was created for her moment, you're created for this moment. And I'm right here for you. I look forward to walking with you along this journey. And I look forward to seeing you and talking to you next week here at Joy in the Pivot. Take care. Love you. Be safe. Bye now.